Alrighty, so in week 7, we continue our development of your decision app and mine as well. I spent a couple hours yesterday going through the process that I'm about to have you do for step 2, and it was very informative in a couple of ways. One is that, you know, the really big benefit to taking some time as you move through each of these code alongs is how well you understand the code that you're writing. And that becomes, more and more impactful because there's just more and more code, first of all, and there's more and more concepts that we're covering. So just in this video, I'm going to talk about, like, part of your attendance is going to be, how do you debug, right? So I've given you, and you've heard me say this over and over again, right? The concept of using dev tools. And I can just tell you, if you're not using dev tools, it is really hard to debug your code because you're just not going to see it. And I use dev tools all the time. And if you're not using dev tools, now would be a great time to start. And I hope if you're in that position to where if for some reason it just maybe your output's not looking like mine, your setup has something different, but the sooner you're working with dev tools, the better your debugging becomes. Okay, so before we jump, I guess I've already jumped into that part, but what I want to do here is just show you an overview of what my step 2 is looking like. I did a little bit of styling because I didn't like mine, and the styling is just, and light coding is iterative, meaning you do it and you do it some more. And that's really one thing you could see in this process of coding. But in this case, of course, when you output, when your form's submitted, you get the, results of that. But now we have the additional tracking using local storage, right? So we had to learn how to save the local storage, that part of our system. And you had a whole code along that talked about what is local storage. And yeah, we're not using it in its typical way. Typically, you'd be using network storage somehow to where your person, and you all feel this when you're using apps, right? So you have your app up, but if you don't have internet, chances are your app's not going to work, right? So in this case, we're just simulating the idea of having some kind of storage. But as importantly, it's persistent now. So even if the browser is, and if I hit a refresh, right, that's still there. That content, so that's what we learned about stringify and parse and why we need to do those things. But in this case, we also added this module for actually how to render the table, okay? Really, really important part of what we did there. So that is the work you're going to do in addition to having this UI that says, hey, if the user clicks here, clicks off there, because it's a destructive action you're about to take, right? So you want to give the user a mini chance, or at least a chance to go, oh, maybe not, right? And in this case, you also are learning how to do asynchronous, right? So the idea of you wait a certain amount of time. And in that case, it simulates a very common thing we do on the web, which is asynchronous code. You make a call to an API. In this case, if you don't know what an API is, but let's say it's Google Maps and you're waiting for some kind of a direction or content back so you render on your app. That ability to make some kind of code wait, have your code wait, is really important part of what we do in coding. But while we're waiting, we don't freeze up the interface. We wait, or we actually do other things. And when it comes back, we react to it. We've actually been doing this with our event listeners, but now we're explicitly doing it here and handling that UI to where, yep, I want it gone, and then it handles that. So that's what you're doing this week, is you're implementing those things into your app. And the thing that, takes a little bit of thinking about really is just first is really building up. And in this case, I want you to output, and you saw mine, right? And I had it stop right here so we could just look at the entry. So if I look at the entry, and this is something I'm going over here because I realized I didn't do a great job in the video I recorded yesterday, is I went through And except for, and actually the timestamp is rendered as well. It's the ID. And this is also something I should do this week. So, but I want that table to actually just for now output all the keys and the values. Okay, sorry, all the values, I should say it this way, all those values in the object that comes out of your decision app and is passed over into your table render. Okay, so, and in a logical way, like for me, energy score and then energy workout, weekday, day workout. So, and again, this is where, and I said this in the video, so this is a repeat. I go, you know what? I could have named these so much better. And that is iterative too, as well. So, matter of fact, one of the jokes in programming, it's one of the hardest things to do, is actually name things. Okay, so getting all the way to where, then you have, and this is where I just finished week 6 attendance, and this is why it's really important to have some kind of decision your app makes. And again, this is different than what the carbon footprint does, okay? But you need all those out there. And then, of course, we're not dealing with the edit and the delete yet. That's something that will come later, okay? So, coming back here, right? So what I want you to do is actually to watch the full video where I go over it, because I actually walk through the approach I took. And the thing I realized in doing this approach, right, is that it's a really important thing to learn to debug your code. And so this is why you've heard me probably in every video, or at least most of them, where I talk about learning dev tools and how important dev tools is to anybody coding, specifically JavaScript, because it's meant to help you find errors in your code. And I can sometimes just look at code and see the errors, but dev tools has just been a great help to me. So anyway, and this is what I said. This is a good time to start talking about how are you approaching debugging your code, because trust me, in this step, I chunk it to where I can kind of look at a module and go through and make all the changes, and then I come back around and run dev tools to see the errors and fix them. Now that's my approach because I've had a bit more coding experience, right? So you'll have to figure this out for your own, and you'll remember in step 1 I had a recommendation for how you just work through getting all the JS files in there. Okay, so coming back to this. Okay, so now this is the video, the first one, right? So a quick overview, a little more detail, or at least the output itself. So in your reply, so what I want you to do here is I want my phone to shut up. Decline. Phone. Okay. So in your reply, consider a recent bug. So what is a bug? A bug is something that is on your console, right? So if I come over to my console, matter of fact, I had one. I could talk about that. I had one actually where when I went through and updated my comments, for some reason, I think it was on my render. Was it on my render? Yeah, where I had those globals for the references, they broke for some reason, and I spent about 30 minutes trying to fix it, right? And in this case, DevTools was not totally helpful to me, and so I ended up asking. Now, this is the other thing. If here's the, let me say it this way. If you start by asking AI versus spending time trying to figure it out, you're bypassing the learning process. And part of what I look for in technical interview is the ability to understand what the code's doing. And you just want to be able to have that level, at least a level of understanding. And if you're running out and doing it the first thing, like I said, I spent about 30 minutes because I did everything I know of. And once I actually did ask, then the answer was like, really? I wouldn't have thought that. And so I continued having conversation with it, but I don't start with AI. I start with my own troubleshooting. And if for some reason I don't, then I could ask for help. But again, bypassing that process is not helpful to developing your skill set. Okay, so for me, I ended up spending some time. DevTools definitely helped me, but didn't answer the question of why. And actually, even AI couldn't really explain to me completely why this was an error now and it wasn't an error before. Okay, so reply considering a recent bug in your code, and how did you approach fixing it, right? Tell us how you discovered the bug and specifically how you fixed it. Of course, one of the great things to do is to have the console up, because and part of this, the bug, part of finding bugs is actually testing everything in your code, making sure you have tested all the things in your code, because sometimes, like I think I was looking at clear. Yeah, I was looking at clear form. Oh, sorry, my nose itches. And I realized I had forgotten to code it. So just know, when I look at your code, that's what I'm going to do, is I go through and I actually test the whole thing to make sure everything works. Okay? So, how did you find it, right? And how did you fix it? And really talk about your process, like how, and if you have and it wouldn't be a bad idea, you actually could start looking at step 2, because you have the video now, right? I don't even mind providing you the instruction itself, but basically you're going to set up a new folder. You do have to have some prereqs, but you can, matter of fact, I think I'll do that. I think what I'll do here is actually give you a link to, matter of fact, the instructions are out on, are public, but some of you may not know to look there. But you could start on, I guess that'd be the other way to do this, is you could start on step 2 if you've met the prerequisites of what you need to have to start 2. And then if you run in an error, you could use that. But if you have an example recently, use that, okay? So in your reply, consider a recent bug in your code. How did you approach fixing it, right? Tell us how you discovered the bug and specifically how you fix it. This is worth 40 points. Use a heading, debugging, okay? And then watch the step 2 video, okay? So the video here I'm providing, that is actually the video for step 2, okay? And then in here, ask a specific question or comment you have regarding the requirements, 30 points, okay? And again, a heading. And I've said you can come up with something fun here. You could also do that here. Now, in this case, I'm actually, as I did this in week 6, making the replies more weighted. Because it's an important thing. And again, look for students who don't have a reply, and especially if, right, they have a specific question that you might be able to answer. So reply to another student that has not gotten a reply, and comment on their debugging or attempt to answer their question for step 2. So that's 30 points, okay? So that is where we're at. We're in week 7. When we get to week 9, at the end of week 9, that's a decision point for you to make about if you're going to stay in the class, which I hope you do. I hope you're getting help. I've noticed more of you are actually now coming to tutoring or to my office to get help. And I think step 1 definitely prompted that, because I think many students, until we actually get to developing something, are just coding along, doing, and you're going to ask, here's the other thing you would ask yourself when you're doing the checkpoints. If you're immediately going out to AI and not attempting to answer them yourself, you're again not benefiting from the idea of a checkpoint. It's like getting answers and typing them back is not checking your knowledge, it's checking AI. Okay, so what you want to be able to do is attempt that process. Okay, how did I get here? I don't remember. Oh yeah, so the drop date, the final drop date, is at the end of week 9. Just giving you some input about what I see. Reaching out for help is important. Learning how to debug your code. Learning how to, spend a little time making sure you understand that code. All right, hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing your output here and your step 2 output as well. I'll talk to you later.